Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Conscious Sewing and Fashion Center. My name is Brenda Holtz, and today I want to continue to share with you some more need-to-know basics, especially if you are self-taught or you are a beginner. This is a great start for you to understand the tools that you need for the trade. So in today's course, I'm going to be sharing with you some measuring tools. And measuring tools are always good to have. You may only have one, but here are some options I want to give to you today. So I'm going to go ahead and start with my hem gauge. This is a hem gauge. And you can use it to mark your hems. You set your hem length, which is, it could be 2 inches, 3, 4, it goes all the way up to 6 inches. So if you want to do a 2-inch hem, you're going to set the little red part of your gauge up to 2 inches. You're going to put it on your hem and you're going to mark it. The red gauge goes to the bottom of your hem and then you're going to mark it at the top. So you'll just measure it 2 inches all the way around. And I just use this little piece of fabric like here. And then when you get to all the way around your garment, then you can take another ruler and just kind of even up everything all the way around. Also, this ruler will also do the same, but it's probably a little bit more, it's bigger, and sometimes it's somewhat cumbersome. So this is a good gauge to use when you're in really, really tight spots. But this ruler I like to use too because it's clear. I can see through it, and when I'm measuring things, I can actually see what is being measured. Now you can take this ruler and do this basically the same thing. It's a 2 by 18 inch clear plastic ruler, and it has like little holes in the center up to about 9 inches. It's about halfway up. The holes in the rulers also can be used to create circles. You can use a pencil or something, put it in there, and then you just kind of twist it around until you get a complete circle. But you can also measure up. I can measure up from the bottom of my fabric. If I want to do like a 1/2 inch, it would just measure up a 1/2 inch. Now, this ruler is basically used for a lot of pattern making because it's easier to manipulate. This one is also a 2 by 18 inch clear plastic ruler, and it's probably used more for quilting because it is a thicker ruler. Whenever you are doing any quilting or cutting of your squares for your quilt, you're going to need a thicker ruler. And if you have a limited budget and you need a 2 by 18 inch ruler, this will be good because it can also translate over into quilting as well. And it's kind of like up to you. Because if you're not going to be doing any pattern making or anything like that in the near future, this is a good ruler to have because you need that edge on there when you're going to be cutting anything. Because you can cut into this thin ruler. You see how flexible it is. You can cut into this little thin ruler and then your ruler is damaged. Now, this is also a quilting ruler too. And I don't do a lot of quilting, but I do use quilting tools in order to help me wherever I need help. And so with this, I can lay this ruler on top of my fabric and cut long strips across the grain. And a lot of the cutting that is done for quilt is done across the grain. So you just lay it on there and then you can just cut it across. This ruler is 6 by 24 inches. That way you can get all the way across your fabric on the fold without having to unfold it, because you can cut all of your samples, maybe even 2 or 3, 4 layers, depending on the sharpness of your rotary cutter. Also, I have a yardstick. Now, they used to give these little yardsticks away for free, but I think nowadays you have to buy them. But it's always good to have one in your arsenal because you can always measure the fabric that you have in your stash. So when you do go to the fabric store, you'll know exactly how much you have if you decide to buy a pattern. You may or may not have enough fabric to use for the pattern that you choose. So it's always good to have a yardstick to measure your fabric at any time. And then, you know, you can always use the fractions on the ruler as well. This is 36 inches and it is 1 yard. It's considered 1 yard, but it's divided into small segments like an eighth of a yard, quarter of a yard, 3/8, 1/2, 5/8, 3/4, 7/8, and 1 yard. So it's divided into eighths. So you'll know exactly how much fabric you have as it relates to the fractions that are on the ruler. Now also, I have an L square. Now this is something you probably won't need in your arsenal. I use it for pattern making and for squaring up my patterns. If I'm making something that's very square, like a pillow or something like that, or a block in a pattern, I use this because it does have a 90-degree angle. Now, this ruler goes from 1 to 24 up this way, and it goes from 1 to 14 this way. So it's a very good ruler to use when you need to draw in a complete or a perfect angle, okay? All right, so also in your arsenal, I would say you would need a curved ruler, because if you are maybe altering a pattern, you may have to redraw in some curves in your pattern. So it's always good to have a curved ruler in your arsenal. Now I have this one. It says a styling design ruler. And this one has multi-purposes, because this one can be used as your armhole if you want to redraw in an armhole. It's also a hip curve if you need to redraw in a hip curve. If you do some alterations, you may need a new line, a new curve in your pattern in order to make it even. And you also have a straight edge, and this one goes all the way up to 16. And it also has like your eighth of an inch, quarter of an inch, 3/4. It goes all the way up to an inch. See these little darker red lines? This is an inch, and then they measure off all of the little segments or the lines in your ruler, so that you can also do in like seam allowances and things like that. So this is a multi-purpose ruler, and it may be a little more expensive than most rulers, but you should have something curved in your arsenal. And I have this little French curve, and the French curve, it's probably less expensive than this one, but you can see if I put them together, the curves are basically the same. If I put that together, that French curve is the same as this, and you can use this for armholes, and you can probably use this for hip curves too. Now, I also have another ruler. I've had this one for years, since I went to design school, and it's basically the same curve. Okay, it's basically the same curve. So you can do armhole, you can do hips, but like I said, this one's probably have the better value in that it has a straight edge, a hip curve, and an arm's eye curve. Now, I also keep this little measuring tool in my pocket, because I can do like a quick view of seam allowances, and each one of them, as you turn it, it has like a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And sometimes I use this to gauge the seam allowances with my students, because sometimes their seams get a little big. And so I want to show them exactly how much they're off, because even though we're not perfect, we want to be precise, especially in our stitching. One thing that you really need to know as a sewist is that you got to get your seams straight. Otherwise, nothing's going to match up perfectly. And then you'll start, improvising. So you don't want to improvise. You want those things to go together really well. So this has 5/8. If I turn it this way, let me turn it this way. Yeah, you can see it. This is a quarter. So if I line this little edge up here with, it'll be a 1/4 of an inch. Now from here, I got 5/8. From here to this edge, out to here is 1 inch. This at the top is 1/2. Now this one from this corner to here is 1 1/4 inches. And from here to this other edge is 3/4. So you got a lot of measurements in there you can really use with this little pocket. I call it a little pocket. It's called a measuring gauge, but it has a lot of purpose in there. And the last thing, oh, not the last thing, there's the magnetic seam guide. Now, it's not a measuring tool, but you can use it to measure your seam allowances. You can put this on your throat plate on your sewing machine because your sewing machine has guidelines to sewing straight. So you can decide which seam allowance you want to sew by moving this seam guide on those lines. So it will go from maybe like 1/4 of an inch, 3/8, 1/2, 5/8, 3/4. So whatever the seam allowance you want to sew, you can use this seam guide as a measuring tool for your seam allowance, okay? Now, there's also the measuring tape. Now, measuring tape is used basically for body measurements. It's a softer measurement because you can't wrap these rulers here around your body, but you do need to be able to measure your body in order to be able to get really good fittings or at least good fitting on your pattern. So measurements are you need this because it's a softer measurements for your body. And so it's used basically for that purpose. And I think this is the last one here. This is something, that I picked up. You don't necessarily need this. It's kind of like up to you. But as a dressmaker, I use it from time to time because a lot of the fabrics for my customers, it had to hang overnight because it was either cut on the bias or it's a really stretchy fabric. And so no matter how you cut it, the hem is not going to be even. So I let it hang. Then I try it on my client, and then I go around the body and measure it. So this little thing here, and I have my client stay in the same position because if they move, then the hem is going to be off. So I have them stay focused or stay put, and then I move this around their body, move it around all the way around till I get the hem all the way done. And the way this work is, you just take the hem, a pincushion here, and you drop it between these little bars in here. So you drop it down like this. So wherever you want the hem to go, you're going to put a pin right in there like that. And then you just keep going around, lift that down because now your hem is pinned. And you're going to pin it the same once you set it because this will go up and down. So you got a deep hem or a long hem, you can go all the way down or you can come all the way up and then just tighten it back up, open it up, drop your hem in. And I suggest you go around the body until you get it all hemmed because you don't want your client to move, the person that you're making. You don't want them to move because every time they move, it could change the evenness of your hem. Okay, I think I covered everything. And if you have some tools of the trade that you would like to share with us, I suggest that you do that. But if you have not started your sewing journey, this information is very, very useful for you. And if not, you can check out my Sew Amazing online courses because I cover all these things in my classes. My beginner to advanced classes do have tools of the trade throughout all the classes, as well as sewing techniques. So if you're new to sewing and you're a beginner or you're starting over again, that's a great place to start. And you can check out these classes on the link below for this course, because they will take you from beginner to advanced and it will get your sewing journey started. Because sometimes we are self-started, we teach ourselves, and sometimes we can teach ourselves some really bad habits. But I'm not going to prolong this video any longer. I want to say thanks for joining me, and I will see you hopefully in the next video. Bye for now.